look at that, look at that. And again, with the car, we talk about the technical improvements that new suspension, coilovers, and in particular these KW V3s bring to the car, but also there's a transformation emotionally as well as technically. The reality is, probably for the first time, if I'm being honest, I'm really enjoying driving this car. As we know, it was a bit of a lemon when I bought it, and it's taken a lot of investment to get it to this stage now, but honestly, the reward is completely worth it.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on our very, very first virtual interview for Digital Province. And today we have on our guest speaker roster, Lee Sibley, who is the editor of Total 911 magazine, as well as YouTube personality for channel That 911 Guy, and is also the creator of Britain's Fried Egg Meats, and which caters specifically to the Porsche 996, which, as you guys can see, is the theme of our production today. So we have Lee here, and we're going to dive into everything about Porsches and all that we can think and talk about of 996s specifically. So thank you for your time, Lee.
That's my pleasure, Derek. Like I say, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a good conversation.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about your path into automotive journalism and how Porsche might have specifically influenced or piqued your interest through your career development?
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with the Porsche element first, shall we? Why not? So yeah, for me, my first experience, if you like, of a 911 was in the late 1990s. I'm not even sure I was 10 at the time. But my dad's best friend came round and he said, oh, I've got this new car. He always had got quite nice cars. And he turned up in a Guards Red 964 C2 cab. Wow. And yeah, it's like a special car, right? And, you know, I was obviously like curious, poking around the car, and he offered to take me out. So he put the roof down, and the two of us are like bombing through these country lanes in Essex, like east coast of England. And actually, my overriding memory of that was, rather than being like enamored with the car, I was actually scared of it, because, as I've told a few people before, all I can remember was this like piercing noise of the air-cooled engine, but it's coming from behind, which is obviously weird, right? It's usually meant to come from the front in a car. So I used to think that with the roof down, I was almost going to get kind of like whooped out from underneath my seatbelt over behind the seat and into this like raucous noise behind. So yeah, first kind of dabble with a 911 was a scary one, actually.
Right on.
Yeah, so very bizarre. But yeah, around the same sort of time, I mean, I always knew from a very young age I wanted to be a journalist. I've always enjoyed writing, and I always liked the buzz of like a newspaper and the responsibility to deliver news and stories to an audience, whether it's in a localized level, national, or whatever. The whole idea of, yeah, going out, finding stories and relaying that to a public that expects you to deliver the news for them. So everything I did at kind of school, college, university built up to me being a journalist. And so my first job in the industry was for Fast Car magazine, because again, I knew I love cars. I absolutely love cars. And to my mind, if I could kind of fuse the two, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. Which actually annoyed my university lecturers, because a lot of those ironically went on to work for the big 24-hour news channels over here, or newspapers. I just wanted to write about cars. I love cars. So yeah, my first post was for Fast Car magazine, a multi-mark magazine. But then the T911 job came up quite quickly. So I'd only been a proper journalist for about 18 months. So I went for the job as editor, which I had absolutely no right to do. But I think the timing was right. And I think the company were just keen to maybe try somebody that's a bit younger. And that was 8 years ago. So like, here we are now, you know, and that's getting that job really was kind of the gateway into a whole new world for me. Meeting so many fantastic people, dealing with this awesome product. And yeah, needless to say, I'm not scared of the 911 anymore. So.
Indeed. And I like, being the big fan that you are for the 996, I mean, like you talk about gateways, and that's sort of what I see the 996 nowadays being. It's a sort of a gateway into Porsche 911 ownership. Now, as an automotive journalist for T911, and you know, having so much access to so many cool 911s that you know, every time I read your articles, I just drool over them. Like so how did you get into loving specifically the 996 and to be, an owner of not one, not two, but, three over the past couple of years?
I think for me, Derek, as you say, I've been very lucky to experience all manner of 911s, transcending the full 57 years of the car's existence. And a lot of them are worth a lot of money. So kind of contrast that to the 996. I specifically remember a twin test I did maybe 5, if not 6 years ago. And it was 996 Gen 1 v Gen 2. The Gen 1 car was in Guards Red. And that's quite striking because, as we all know, there's not too many Guards Red 996s on the planet. And I think it was the colour more than anything struck me, because to me, Guards Red is the quintessential 911 colour. You put it on any generation of 911 and it suits, it works. And then, so I think that was kind of really piqued my interest in the car. And then we did this head to head. And again, ironically, it was kind of back home where I'm from, not too dissimilar road to the Guards Red 964 cab I mentioned. Zipping through these roads and just thinking, this is incredible. And, and a Gen 1 at the time in this country was say 14,000 pounds. And I think it was something tweaked in my brain where it was like, well, the RSs that we try are way, way, way on from that, 10 times plus. But, it's not necessarily 10 times the car for like want of an example. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of weeks after that, we did a similar test. It was an ultimate guide, actually, of a 996 anniversary, real rare car. And as we know, in kind of Porsche circles, we're all sticklers for limited and numbered production builds, aren't we? And obviously the anniversary is the only numbered production build 996. And again, I was just gobsmacked for everything that came on this car. It's a very high specification. It helped that the car in question was a low mileage example. It had done about 12,000 miles. It looked like nobody had sat in the car ever. And again, it's kind of that celestial moment of standing back, looking at the car and saying, well, look, compared to other 911s, this is phenomenal value for money, phenomenal value. And I think with the 996, that's the win for the car, isn't it? It's just so amazing value, and that theme goes right the way up the ladder. So not just Carrera, I'm talking, any model of 911, whether it be turbo, GT2, GT3, GT3 RS. Always the best value car, or the cheapest car, I'll say, is a 996. Yeah. And I find that absolutely incredible, because I mean the 996 GT3 RS, for example, is one of the best 911s that I've ever driven. It would definitely be in my top 5 911s of all time. It's also one of the rarest water-cooled 911s you can buy, with only 682 made worldwide. Compare that to 600 from the 997 GT3 RS 4 litre. So it's one of the best and one of the rarest, but it's still the cheapest GT3 RS you can buy. And I think that, to me, is just where the 996 wins. If you can get past things such as fried egg headlights and whatnot, it's incredible value for money. And like I say, there is no 911 that comes near it, actually, in terms of value for money and that thrill you get from behind the wheel.
That's definitely true. And I can attest to that with my 996.2 as well. It's just such great value compared to like really anything else out there as far as 911s go. And, you can have pennies on the dollar. So
for sure, and I've heard on a podcast, I can't remember who said it now, but it was on a Smoke and Tide podcast, maybe about a year, 18 months ago. Mm-hmm. Cracking point, and it's always stuck with me. And the 996, the other beauty of that generation generally is it transcends many kind of social situations. So you park a 996 at a hotel for like valet parking, and there's people there going, wow, lovely Porsche, mate, what a lovely car that is. And it costs, less than a Volkswagen Golf to buy, and so like everybody I know, like my friends at home, some of them aren't particularly into cars. They're like, wow, you own a Porsche, like that's absolutely incredible. And I can go to a Cars and Coffee and park it next to a GT3 RS and I feel just as welcome. And like I said, it's cost me less than a Golf to buy. And I just, again, I think that's magical, actually,
Yep, absolutely. I had a similar experience. I think I went to the pub one time to meet some of my friends. And as I was parking, another car, which was, I believe, an Audi S4, which was new at the time.
Yeah.
Had just parked, and as I was locking the door, the guy came over. It's like, oh, I love this car. It's, you know, it's really classic and it's really nice. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that his car was probably triple the price of mine.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, those are the moments that really show the value of this ride.
Absolutely. And I think kind of historically, I would say this is changing slightly now, but historically, as you rightly said, 996 is the gateway into Porsche ownership generally, and particularly like 911 ownership, which is great. I feel like it is changing a little bit now, whereby some people may have other cars, like, for example, a 997 GT3. Well, if they bought that car 4 or 5 years ago, that car has kind of appreciated quite considerably, and it might not be the ideal proposition for a track car now because it's simply worth too much. So there are people that are going out now and buying 996s, modifying them, just, you know, a good set of coilovers and using it as a track car, and whereby, you know, if they bin it into a wall or something, providing they're okay, you know, they've not written off their investment, you know. So the 996, I think, is definitely gaining in appeal. And I'm not saying that because I own one. I'm saying that as a journalist, you know, it's definitely gaining in appeal, and I think there's a real place for it. It saved the company after all.
Definitely. And I've been active on group forums and stuff, and I keep the people that harp on this car being you know, the next greatest thing, which I know it is. I keep telling them, you know, please try to keep this a secret, because I don't really want to see skyrocketing prices of 996s, because this is really the only available and accessible 911 that we really have right now. But you're right. I believe that there is something there, and we're certainly seeing other people realize this.
Definitely. I think what's good about it though, Derek, as well, is I think prices will always be fairly low, certainly in the medium term future, because you compare it to a 964, for example. A decade ago, you could buy a 964 or a 996 or an SC. You kind of had a plethora of choices for an entry level 911. As we know, those cars have just absolutely gone into unobtainium in terms of, you know, you just want a good C2 manual non-sunroof car. In this country, it's £70,000, where there's not long ago, as I say, it was 12,000. It's a different ball game there. Now with the 996, why that's different is Porsche's made a lot of them. Sure. And currently there aren't companies like Singer taking all these cars off the market and reimagining them and whatnot. So I think it's fine for everybody else to realise like the potential of a 996 in terms of the enjoyment behind the wheel, because there really is that many of them to choose from. So I don't think, unfortunately, they'll go up in value significantly anytime soon.
And well, in my mind, that might actually be a good thing, because then the parts price is low. It'll keep it accessible if I, like you said, ever wanted another car to be my 911 track car. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then if the 996 goes up in value and some people start thinking, well, it's a bit too much money for me to enjoy so much now, well, where do you turn to after that? Because all the other 911s have shot up anyway. So, you know, where do we go?
So speaking of the 996 being the gateway, now, as I said earlier, you've owned not one, not two, but three. So of these three cars, can you sort of walk us through that, you know, that process and your journey with them, for us to understand, you know, I guess how and why you've switched between these three cars, and also like the different levels of enjoyment, because I understand that they're also three somewhat different cars. You went with a narrow body C4 to start with, and then a wide body C4S, and now you have a narrow body early 996.1, which you can see in the background,
Yeah.
as you like to call it. Beautiful car, by the way.
Thanks.
So yeah, if you don't mind sort of walking us through that, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, each kind of car has coincided with life choices I've had to make. And again, I think that's like most cars, that's what happens. And it also, again, shows the versatility of the 996, that you can take a 996 on your journey through life with you. The C4, first foray into 911 ownership. It was, for me, a choice between a 996 Gen 2 C2 or this C4, both in basalt black, both manual. For me, it came down to condition, as it always does. You know, there are three important things when it comes to buying a 911. It's condition, condition, condition. And that's for me. Yeah, I went with the C4. The C2 I felt was a little more tatty, had a big bills kind of incoming. The C4 wasn't perfect by any stretch, but I liked that. I feel like I could jump in the car and use it. We did some fantastic road trips with friends through Wales, and all in far superior cars to my own in terms of value. And I was way ahead. I didn't have a care in the world, sewing the corners together, just really wringing the neck of that 3.6 motor. Absolutely loved it. And again, like I say, kind of really opened that gateway for me in the world of Porsche. Met some fantastic people just through owning a 911, people that have become dear friends of mine. So that was awesome, absolutely awesome. I realised, however, that the C4S, to my mind, that's just the most beautiful rear end of any 911, full stop. I think it's unbeatable. I like the wide body as well. It just had that kind of better stance to it, the turbo look, if you like. I'm a big fan of a wide body 911. So I kind of made it my mission to get into one. And it just so happened that I could sell my car at a certain price point and make the jump into this C4S without kind of too much collateral damage on the bank balance or getting it in the ear from my wife. So I was lucky in that sense, actually, to get just a good price for the C4. So I jumped into the C4S, and again, actually, it came down to two. The C4S that I bought was absolutely immaculate, but it had 13 owners, which is well, crazy, really. I question myself sometimes on that as how I pulled the trigger. But as I said, it came back to condition, and I contrast that. There was another C4S came in at my local Porsche dealership, Porsche Centre Bournemouth, and they rang up and said, well, look, we've got a seal grey C4S in with one owner. Do you want to come have a look? I did, and it had come down from Scotland. It's quite harsh weather up there, and it was really badly rusted. So I went with the high owner car, which I still can't get my head around, really, with that amount of owners. Again, it looked like nobody had ever sat in it. But I liked it. It had some rare things like the carbon pack, which is quite rare outside of the turbo or GT2 model lineup for the 996, and loved it. I think, generally speaking, the Gen 2 has a much better build quality over the Gen 1. I actually think that the shift is better as well. As a lot of Gen 1s, they, as you probably know, Derek, they vary in like quality of shift. And sometimes they're so, when the oil's cold, it's so hard to just slick through the gate on those. I feel with the Gen 2, that was improved without a doubt. Obviously, there's the headlight thing, but to me, it doesn't matter whether it's a Gen 1 or Gen 2 and fried egg headlight or not. You can't see the headlight when you're behind the wheel, right? But it is for me, that's the big thing in terms of sitting behind the wheel is the build quality. And I have to say, when I bought my current car, the narrow body Gen 1, as you say, I really felt that. And it took me, well, until about 3 weeks ago, actually, to fall in love with that car. I sold the C4S because my wife and I were buying a house, and I essentially needed the money on a house deposit. So that just kind of freed up a little bit of cash. But I had the bug, and I knew I had to kind of keep my foot in the 911 game. And I picked up the car, the Gen 1. I think I paid 14,000 for it, which was probably, it's not a great deal of money in terms of 996. It's at the lower end of the scale, but it was probably a bit too much for that specific example. It was in a real bad way, and I didn't realise just how bad until I'd got the car home on my drive. So I learned a very big lesson that day, and it's a lesson actually that I do preach to people. It's you should always get an inspection. So yeah, the inferior build quality to a Gen 2 was something that really bothered me. But I have to say I prefer the 3.4 litre engine to the 3.6. I think the 3.6 is just torquier lower down. So what I really enjoy in the Gen 1 cars is really living in the top half of that tacho, really wringing the car's neck, to keep momentum. And I think the Gen 1 is a bit more of a momentum car compared to a Gen 2. But again, lovely sweet spot in terms of weight, 1,370 kilos in C2 form, 300 horsepower. For a road car, absolutely perfect. So yeah, that's kind of a brief kind of breakdown from the two, really. But again, in terms of like what I say to people when they're looking to buy a car or buy a 996, is to not get too kind of held up on Gen 1 v Gen 2. Try both and see what one you like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right on. And I've I mean, I can only contrast, mine is a Gen 2. I can only contrast the Gen 1 with my experience driving one of my friends that I think was a couple of years ago. They do have very different personalities, and I was surprised by that. But at this point, I can't say which one I like more. Like you said, one of them is lower end torque. Mine is certainly that, even with modified exhaust components, which sort of push the the peaky nature of the engine a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's still a different experience than the .1, the 3.4. But I mean, overall, like you said, it really depends on what you as a person personally like, as opposed to like the car itself. It just delivers something different.
Definitely, and there are things on the Gen 1 which still perplex me to this day. For example, there's no cup holders. I find that incredulous. And no glove compartment as well. Again, it's small things, but Porsche kind of revisited that for the Gen 2 and kind of sorted things out. But yeah, they are very different actually. But again, it's about trying them both and seeing which one you prefer as an individual. They both have squeaks and rattles and bits to fix. That's fine. They all do, but it's about just choosing which car is the right one for you.
Yeah. And for all our viewers, I definitely recommend popping onto Lee's YouTube channel to see what he has done with his car from, I believe you started with removing the wrap, and you've done a bunch of suspension components on it, as well as new coilovers and new ribs. So the car is a completely transformed beast now, but definitely everybody pop on when you get a chance. And there's a lot of good stuff on there and good information on 911s as well.
That is very kind. I think that the whole thing that I'm trying to achieve with my YouTube videos is to provide an educational experience. It's not about going on there and saying, "Hi guys, here's my car. What color should I wrap it today?" It's about saying, "Well, look, here's a humble 996, which is undoubtedly what my car was when I first got it," and really kind of just showing the potential of what you can do with that platform. And then it's kind of down to you as an individual to kind of work out where you want to finish up with your own car. I mean, the paint is kind of a little bit out there financially, but it was wrapped as you may know from the channel. The wrap was hanging; it had to come off the car. And when we pulled the white wrap off, it was Zenith blue underneath, which is quite a nice 996 color actually. But it had clearly been painted before badly, and all the paint came off with the wrap. So it needed a respray anyway, and we managed to kind of work out of a deal. But I mean, yeah, just in terms of like replacing chassis components, they all need doing right. I'm sure you know that. Mm-hmm. So it's just about seeing, what you can do with that platform, as I said. And yeah, you choose your own path from there, don't you?
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, speaking about the platform and your YouTube channel, like one of the videos that really caught my attention was your interview with Pinky Lai,
yes.
The designer attributed to penning the 996. And it was very enlightening, the circumstances that he went through to get the car to come to be, or rather almost didn't get it to come to be. But as a uncontested 996 fan, what do you think was your biggest takeaway from that particular discussion?
I think more than anything, just how close that company got to collapse. It kind of has gone down in folklore, and it's, almost the story has been embellished at Cars and Coffees throughout the kind of the 20 years since. But speaking to Pinky on it, I mean, decisions that he had to make, as well as trying to design the car, was trying to keep his colleagues in the job. And he was having to let people go on a weekly basis to kind of trim the wage bill back and cut corners, essentially, just to try and keep that company going. How he and his team, should I say, managed to kind of create that car from the complete lack of resources that was available at the time is kind of beyond me. And ultimately create a car, take out the looks, but it's lighter and faster, more economical. And actually it was cheaper to buy new than the 993, the car before it. And it really was kind of the catalyst for that company's turnaround at Porsche. I mean, how many years later were they creating a Carrera GT, for example? I mean, at the end of the millennium, it wasn't in a position to do that, and I think so that's the first thing, but also actually just how much that Porsche as a company has grown since the 996. And I mean, almost exponentially, you know. Whereas Pinky was saying that he could kind of count his team on one hand, whereas by contrast that to today with Michael Mauer, the head of Porsche Studio, Porsche Design, for the 991 and 992 generations, you've got 60 people working on those cars, you know. So it's a very, very, very different ball game to what it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Definitely. And as Porsche fans, I'm sure all of us can say that we're happy for that turnaround, because otherwise we wouldn't be experiencing everything that we see nowadays.
Oh, of course, and this is it. And this is kind of when it goes back to the 996 and the ability to park at a Cars and Coffee or whatever event next to, say, a 991 GT3 RS with VISAP pack. Well, without the 996, that VISAP pack car wouldn't exist, you know. And yeah, it sounds kind of cliche, but that car is undoubtedly the saviour of the company. And it's made so many awesome cars since and given us all such fantastic experiences and memories. And it all resides with Pinky Lie's 996.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of Cars and Coffee, as I mentioned in the introduction, you have been the organizer of 2 fried egg events. Now, yes. These are specifically tailored to the 996, which I certainly really appreciate. And I know you're doing a 3rd one coming soon.
Yes.
And so, can you tell us a little bit more about how these meets came to be?
Yeah, sure. So for me, the decision to do it really resided with this rise in like exclusive car meets. Cars and Coffee has been a huge thing in North America, hasn't it, for many years. It only has really taken off in the UK in the last sort of 5 years. But I've seen stateside and here that it quickly kind of developed into these people doing these little events where it was, can you email us or direct message us and let us know what car you've got? And it was almost like, you know, we'll decide if you're cool enough to come to our event. And I don't like that. I think Porsche as a company stands for inclusivity rather than exclusivity. That's really at the core of what Porsche as a company has always been around. And obviously the 996 was, it suffered, shall we say, under that sort of rationale, you know. And I just kind of, I didn't like it that the 996 and 996 owners were being sidelined and marginalised so much. I mean, what you have to remember is, say, a 991 GT3 manual owner or, say, a 911R owner, their first Porsche was probably a 996. And we talked about it at the top of the conversation, didn't we, about the 996 being the gateway. And I think it's important to not burn that individual, because that individual could go on to have 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of Porsches, you know, and 911s. And it's not a corporate responsibility. I don't have any corporate responsibility to Porsche whatsoever. I think it's a social responsibility, you know. Everybody has to start somewhere. It kind of goes back years ago. My dad and I were out one day and he called into a local Ferrari garage near us. And my dad, for some context, drives a van and always has done. But I had a Ferrari F40 on the wall as I was growing up. And he called in and just said to the guy, look, do you mind if my son has a sit in one of the cars? Yeah, not a problem, was the reply. And I had these like pictures really young of, you know, standing on the seat holding this wheel. And, you know, who knows, if that scenario didn't happen and take place, I might have grown up to have zero interest in cars, you know. And so I feel it's important to not kind of shut down these opportunities and actually kind of present opportunity to everybody. And that's kind of under that sort of ethos where this idea for doing a 996 only meet was. I wanted to just give owners their day in the sun to enjoy themselves. And it's kind of coincided with the 996 riding on a bit of a crest of a wave and popularity, as you know. And as I said earlier in the conversation, to me, there are people turning up, not just guys that have just got into a 996 and it's their pride and joy, it's the 1911 they own, a bit like myself. There are people with a collection of cars. The 996 is one of them, and they really enjoy getting out and mixing with like-minded people. And that, as I say, is exactly what it is all about.
Definitely. It's we have a saying actually as Porsche Club of America. We always say that it's all about it's not just about the cars, it's about the people. So
without a doubt. And that for me is like the overriding theme in my job is, you know, the cars are absolutely fantastic. They're nothing without the people, absolutely nothing. So yeah, you're dead right.
Right on. Now, I would be remiss to not ask you this, because fried eggs is just such inspiring event for us 996 owners, especially across the pond over here in Canada. Now it really is the premier event, and I know, as much as you said you don't want to be exclusive, would you consider coming by Ontario, Canada at some point in time and hosting us one of these?
I would absolutely love to do that. I really would. I think, again, the big thing that I've realised in organising these, and it's quite organic in the way I do them. They have just been UK at first. The first one was at a pub on a Sunday morning, and I did some goodie bags for people. I think I did 20 or 25 goodie bags. I thought, if they all go and there's 25 people turn up to this, that's a great success. I didn't realise how popular it would be. And I've had messages similarly from people on Instagram from around the world saying, oh, I would love to do one here. And to my mind, great, and also it doesn't need me to be there for the meet to happen. If there's enough 996, not just owners, but enthusiasts in the area that want to do something, then they absolutely should do something. As I say, this thing of the 996 being marginalised in some aspects of kind of Portiadom, it does happen everywhere. So we should celebrate the 996's Day in the Sun around the planet. But yeah, for me, I would absolutely love to organise many different events all over the planet. I was trying to organise one on the East Coast of the United States this year, obviously pre-COVID and before the world had a wobble, shall we say. But it's definitely, so long as safety and governments permit, then in the future, that is absolutely the plan. I think the future is very, very bright for the 996 indeed, and it should be celebrated.
Beautiful. And if you do end up organising it somewhere on the East Coast, I will drive down and see you there.
Yeah, you're a legend, Derek. You are a legend. But like I say, let's do something where you are. I think it would be absolutely awesome. As soon as it's safe to do so, and we're all kind of allowed to get back on planes in a safe and efficient manner again, we should absolutely do that.
Right on. Absolutely. Well, so I just wanted to thank you for taking the time and all the way in the UK to spend some time talking to us about all things Porsche and all things 996. This was a very, very great honor, and I really do thank you for spending this time with us. And on behalf of our club and everybody who's a 996 enthusiast, thank you for everything you've done for the community.
The pleasure is all mine, and I really appreciate people within the club taking the time to listen to my story. I'm really grateful.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Lee.
Excellent, Derek. Take care, okay? All the best.
Take care.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.